talking with JohnBrunette. John, would you provide us with some information about yourself and then talk with us about what it was like to negotiate in Pennsylvania prior to the passage of the law that made collective bargaining for public and school employees legal in the state? And then, would you talk about how the law changed bargaining in the years since the passage of the law?
I'll give it a shot. I spent 30 years as a professional staff member of the Pennsylvania State Education Association. Prior to that time, I had taught for 5 years, and my career began teaching in 1966. And my career with PSEA was from 1971 to 2001. So my experience is with both public education and with representing public employees bargaining over a 35-year period. Lest anybody becomes extremely bored by this presentation, you of course have a way that you can turn this off. The interesting part about 35 years that I spent representing teachers in bargaining and other school employees is probably the societal and cultural aspects that led to an atmosphere that would allow folks in public education to bargain contractually. The 1960s were years of extreme cultural upheaval. The Second World War had produced an unheralded economic boom in the country, mostly fed by the complete demise of all the economies in the rest of the world. So as we geared up to win the war industrially, the United States had no economic competition worldwide because the industries of Europe and the industries of Asia had been totally destroyed. In that period between World War II and the 1960s, the workforce in the United States became economically independent, and in the northeastern part of the United States, highly unionized. At the same time that public educators were feeling rather pinched financially, many of the students of public education were able, because of economic conditions, without any formal additional education beyond high school, they were able to be the breadwinners and live quite comfortably on one-income families. As more and more men joined the educational ranks as a result of the GI Bill of Rights providing college education availability, the profession itself changed from predominantly female to more and more male-dominated parts of the profession, mostly in the secondary schools. At the same time, there was an immense change in the rights of women who had been extremely oppressed in the workplace by antiquated rules and regulations. And as men entered the profession, women became extremely militant and pressed for their share of what they perceived to be appropriate roles in the workplace. This all came together in the 1960s when it became apparent to most people who were in education that they were extremely underpaid, and there was a general understanding that we either move forward or we move out. And that was an underlying influence that pressed most public employees in education to try to do something about their economic welfare. Thus, we had bargaining on a very informal level with school boards throughout the state. From about 1967 through 1971, I participated in bargaining collectively in a school district. At the time, bargaining was not illegal, but since 1947, the right to strike had been legislatively taken away. In other words, no public employee in Pennsylvania could strike without fear of losing their job. There was so little to be lost in the workplace in public education that there was no concern over what would happen to somebody who would be collectively bargaining. It was rather that the economic stability of the situation mandated that you did something about what was happening to you. I can still remember my first paycheck as a teacher. For 2 weeks of employment, my paycheck was $143.92. So there was really no place to go but up. Before legalized bargaining in Pennsylvania, it was really up to the wits of the people who were at the bargaining table to achieve that which they thought was necessary. I might add that the general political flavor, the landscape of politics in the late 50s and in the 1960s was completely different than we find it today. Political parties were not driven so much by ideology as they were pragmatism. So when it came to public employees and public education, most people in government had a positive attitude for doing that which was necessary to improve the schools and to improve the lot of public employees. In this atmosphere, it became apparent that school boards also wanted to do what was best for the folks in education. So as we approached school boards to bargain collectively, there was not a general negative approach to bargaining, but more of a joint problem-solving attempt by school boards to try to improve the lot of teachers and the economic conditions of educational employees.